Imagine this, a torchlit chamber, a trembling king, and a parchment written not in ink but in blood. A single sentence scrawled across it, I, name of king, son of father's name, hereby sell my soul to Lucifer, prince of darkness, for state-desired reward. It sounds like something out of a lurid horror novel, or a heavy metal concept album. But throughout history there have actually been a handful of kings who were accused of selling their souls to the devil, and the stakes of these deals were often nothing less than total world domination. Today we're going to tell you about them and hopefully warn you against signing any documents written in blood. Let's get started. A chill wind whipped across the barren Scottish moors, biting at the faces of the assembled nobles. On the rocky outcrop before them, King James VI, the 7th and the 8th of Scotland nervously adjusted the crown upon his head. It was 1490 and James had just taken the throne at the age of 14 months old. Things were looking pretty bleak for him. The last 4 monarchs of Scotland had met violent ends, and civil war was raging across the country. Desperate to protect his newborn son and secure his own position, James' mother appealed to the tutelary deity of the region, the devil. She offered him her own soul in exchange for her son's safety and the restoration of order in Scotland. Now some say that she was serious, while others claim that she was merely pretending to make a deal with the forces of darkness, so that she could use that as a bargaining chip with rival factions. Whatever the truth may be, her pleas reached the ears of the local lord of the underworld, who accepted her offer and made good on his end of the bargain. With the forces of evil on his side, James' father, James IV, was returned to life. The civil wars ended almost immediately thereafter, and young James grew up knowing that he owed his life to the devil. Legend says that he kept a portrait of Satan in his bedroom, and he frequently held meetings with demonic counselors. Many believe that he even celebrated mass with inverted prayers and that he promoted heresy and witchcraft while he was king. But the weirdest part is that he didn't seem to ever pay back the debt he owed to the Prince of Darkness. Despite the claims of his horrified contemporaries, no record exists of the soul of James VI, 7th and 8th, being forfeit to the devil. Did he strike a better deal behind closed doors? Was he simply too powerful for hell to collect on its debt? Or did the Lord of Darkness decide to forgive him for his sins? We may never know the answer, but the legends lived on long after James died. Fast forward a few hundred years to the Holy Roman Empire of 15th century Germany, where a young man named Johann Georg Faust made a name for himself as a skilled magician and alchemist. Like James VI, 7th and 8th of Scotland, Faust wasn't satisfied with the normal trappings of power. Instead, he wanted knowledge of all things occult, and he was unafraid to deal with the forces of evil in order to get it. During one particularly dark ritual, he summoned the devil himself, made him an offer, and laid the groundwork for thousands of stories that would follow in the centuries to come. You see, Faust was not the first person to strike a bargain with the devil, and he definitely was unto the last. Accusations of devilish dealings plagued many powerful men in the early modern period, including Pope Sylvester II, who allegedly sold his soul in order to gain knowledge of astrology and astronomy. Sylvester's supposed rise in power and influence came so suddenly that his enemies whispered that he made a deal with the devil, either literally or figuratively. After all, he was the first pope to study Arabic translations of ancient Greek texts, so it was unheard of to accuse him of dipping into forbidden knowledge in order to ascend to greatness. However, Sylvester wasn't the only one accused of such dealings. There was also Henry VIII of England, who faced down the mighty Pope Clement VII in order to get a divorce so that he could marry Anne Boleyn. Given that the Catholic Church had very strict rules about divorce, many wondered how he managed to bend the church to his will. Rumors swirled that he'd sold his soul to the devil, but perhaps the most famous example of this sort of accusation came during the reign of King Charles VI of France, who supposedly attended secret black masses and prostituted himself in taverns and brothels. As his behavior grew weirder and weirder, rumors spread that he'd struck a bargain with the devil, and that now the Prince of Darkness had come to collect. Of course, given that Charles suffered from severe mental illness, it's possible that these accusations were entirely false. However, the legends persisted and served as inspiration for future stories of kings who traded their souls for worldly pleasures. Take, for example, the story of Theophilus, a 6th century church official who hated the fact that he was poor and powerless. Consumed with envy, he decided to seek out a secret sorcerer, who promised to help him get everything he desired. All he had to do was sign a contract renouncing Christ and serve the devil for all eternity. But Theophilus agreed and soon found himself elevated to power and wealth. Although initially happy with his new situation, he soon grew bored with his life and began to fear that he'd betrayed God. Legends say that he sought out the Virgin Mary to plead for his soul, and that she eventually tore the contract to shreds before the altar, thus freeing him from his obligations to the devil. However, the exact details of this story varied from teller to teller. Sometimes the contract was burned or dissolved in water instead of being ripped to pieces, and sometimes Theophilus wasn't redeemed at all. Regardless, the tale served as a cautionary one for other ambitious church officials, and the idea stuck. Stories of men trading their souls for power, wealth and knowledge began popping up all over Europe, and the rest, as they say, is history. So why exactly did these stories spread so far and wide? Well, the simple explanation is that human beings are kind of naturally suspicious. When someone rises to power quickly or gains wealth or knowledge that most people don't have access to, we naturally assume that they must have done something underhanded in order to achieve it. And what could be more underhanded than selling your soul to the devil himself? Now, sure, some of these accusations were likely rooted in religious fervor and bigotry, but others probably had more basis in reality. Take, for example, the story of Faust, who was known to have dabbled in dangerous forms of magic and alchemy. He was also a man whose ambition knew no bounds, and who wasn't afraid to experiment with dangerous ideas in his quest for knowledge. It's therefore not surprising that the legend of Faust has endured for centuries, and that it has inspired countless works of art and literature. He has become the quintessential example of a man who sold his soul to the devil in order to gain power. But while Faust might have been a real historical figure, the specifics of his story are almost certainly legendary. Just like the stories of kings who sold their souls for power, wealth, and knowledge, the truth is that we can't know for sure what really happened. All we have are the stories that were passed down to us by our ancestors, and those stories have been embellished and altered over time to fit the needs of those who tell them. In the case of Faust, most historians agree that he was a real person who lived during the 15th century, and that he dabbled in magic and alchemy. However, there's little evidence that he ever made a deal with the devil. The story probably originated from rumors that spread about Faust's strange behavior and his interest in forbidden knowledge. As the story goes, he hosted wild parties that featured naked women, copious amounts of alcohol, and bizarre rituals. Some of his guests even claimed to have seen the devil in attendance. Given Faust's already shady reputation, it wasn't hard for people to believe that he'd made a deal with the devil, and once the story started spreading, it was impossible to stop. So, did any kings in history actually sell their souls to the devil? We may never know for sure, but the fact remains that the legends have endured for centuries. They've inspired countless works of art, literature, and film, and they continue to fascinate us today because, let's face it, who wouldn't want to know what it's like to have unlimited power at your fingertips?